Hey, all you hoppers, it's your favorite podcaster, Dave, coming at you with a brand new episode of Dave's Hoppin Beats. I hope you're all doing well. So, my podcast kind of dropped off the face of the earth, but I am back. That's right, everyone. The greatest podcaster ever is back for another episode. If you were wondering why I suddenly stopped producing quality content, it's because I got COVID back in January, and it just kind of discouraged me to keep on making episodes. On top of that, I started doing my radio show up on Aggie Radio, which further discouraged me because I was getting kind of the same kick out of doing that. But I have a new format of podcast that I'm excited to start working on. What I'll be doing, starting with this episode, is discussing all the albums that I listen to in a given month. This month, I will talk about all the albums that I listened to in February. I'll give my general thoughts about the album, give it a score out of 5, and say which were my favorite songs. This February, I listened to 35 albums, so I won't be able to cover each album in depth. So just keep that in mind. Well, enough chit-chat. Let's jump right in. Starting off the month, I listened to Demon Days by the Gorillaz. I've been getting into the Gorillaz recently, and I had heard from a lot of people that this record was their best. So I decided to check it out. And surprise, surprise, it was pretty fantastic. What I enjoy so much about the Gorillaz is the way they merge so many genres so seamlessly. They merge hip-hop with alternative rock, and what comes out the other end is brilliant pop classics. Songs that pretty much anyone can enjoy. Songs Feel Good Inc., Dare, and El Mañana are Gorillaz at their best. On my first listen, I found some of the tracks to be a little bit more on the filler side, but I think that I need to let the album just settle a little bit in my mind and in my stomach, and I'll enjoy it more. I'll give Demon Days a 4 out of 5. Right after I finished listening to Demon Days, on the same day I listened to Gorillaz' fantastic third album, Plastic Beach. This is for me Gorillaz' finest moment. The record has some of their coolest features, such as rock legend Lou Reed of the Velvet Underground fame, and of course the classic rapper Snoop Dogg. It has some of their catchiest and funnest songs, such as Superfast Jellyfish and Rhinestone Eyes. It also is a brilliant concept. It is also a brilliant concept album that tackles themes of environmentalism in a sincere and non-pandering way. My favorite track on the album would have to be Some Kind of Nature. Not only is it my favorite Gorillaz song, but it also happens to be one of my favorite Lou Reed tracks. Overall, it's a very exciting and innovative album that I love re-listening to. I'll give it a 4.5 out of 5. After Plastic Beach and after my Gorillaz kick, I decided to listen to Lauryn Hill Unplugged. Now, the miseducation of Lauryn Hill is one of the few records that I can safely deem as perfect. Every song on that album is perfectly constructed pop music. There's not a single bad song on the whole thing, and it will always hold a special place in my heart. For that reason, I always tried to avoid this record. I had heard a lot of mixed thoughts. Some people love it, while others absolutely despise it. After listening to it, I can happily report that I fall into the love it camp. There are times when you listen to a record where it feels artificial. Do these artists really care about anything they're singing about? Do they even care about the audience that they're performing to? Do they care about the message they're trying to present? But when I listen to Lauryn Hill's music, I can always feel her sincerity. Some of my favorite parts of this live recording are where she's simply talking to the audience. The way she discusses the problems that she's going through in a bare and honest way makes the music that she sings all the more believable. Unlike Miseducation, the songs here are acoustic folk tracks, which is a shocking left turn for her, but I found that she made the transition comfortably into the new genre. The lyrics are beautiful. The emotion and passion are flowing in each and every track. The guitar playing and singing are top-notch. This is also the first album I've ever listened to that genuinely made me shed a tear. The messages of self-worth, repentance, and being who you really are were exactly what I needed to hear that day. It's definitely not for everybody. It is about 2 hours long and the music can seem a little repetitive sometimes, but I love it considerably. My favorite songs would have to be I Gotta Find Peace of Mind and So Much Things to Say, the Bob Marley cover. Definitely check it out if you're a Lauryn Hill fan like I am. I'd give this incredible album a 5 out of 5.
A lot of these songs too, some of them, they don't even really have titles yet, so if you have any suggestions, just, raise your hand, so I'll call them like a line in the song. This one, we refer to as Adam Lives in Theory. And when I refer to Adam, I'm really speaking about all of humanity, without exception of anybody, And I know that a lot of the content in the songs is very heavy, but see, fantasy is what people want, but reality is what they need. And I've just retired from the fantasy part because I realized that y'all gonna make me cry. Adam lives in theory, trying to turn stone into bread, masquerading like he's got it figured out. Cut off from the sunshine, only smart in his own head.
After I listened to Lauryn Hill Unplugged, I listened to Back to Black by Amy Winehouse. The album is, once again, an album that I feel I will appreciate more the more I listen to it. But what immediately drew me in was the obvious inspiration it took from 1960s pop. I hear a lot of Aretha Franklin, Ronettes, Dionne Warwick here. While the soul pop influence is clear, Winehouse brings her own spin to it that just makes it feel fresh and new and exciting. It's an astonishingly great collection of songs that I am glad that I checked out. My favorite song is probably Rehab and the title track. I'll give it a 4 out of 5.
They tried to make me go to rehab. I said no, no, no. Yes, I've been black, but when I come back, no, no, no. I ain't got the time, and if my daddy thinks I'm fine, they try to make me go to rehab. I won't go.
This month I listened to a lot of albums that were recommended to me by the website Rate Your Music, and Tago Mago by Can was one of them. Honestly, I've never been a huge fan of prog rock. There are a few exceptions like Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon and In the Court of the Crimson King, but for the most part it's a genre that I don't particularly love. Unfortunately, this album falls into the group of albums that I don't technically love in the prog rock genre. Obviously, I can appreciate it for its fantastic production, great instrumentalism, but I just found it to be overlong and not as engaging as other albums on this list. Please don't hate me, but this wasn't my favorite album. I'd give it a 2 out of 5. I'm not sure why, but I've always found great folk records to be infinitely re-listenable, and Helplessness Blues by Fleet Foxes is definitely one of those. I've probably listened to this album 20 times in the 6 months that I've known of it. What really stands out to me in their sophomore album are the wonderful lyrics, bright and colorful guitar work, and fantastic vocals. It's a very timely record as well that discusses depression, self-worth, and among other very important modern issues. The title track isn't just my favorite Fleet Foxes song, but it may be one of my all-time favorite tracks ever in folk genre, any genre out there. I love it. I think the pacing slows down a bit by the end, but other than that, it is an astonishingly great album. Very well paced, very well put together, a lot of thought put into it. Really cool artwork as well, album cover. I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5.
I was raised up believing I was somehow unique, like a snowflake distinct among snowflakes, unique in each way you can see. And now after some thinking, I'd say I'd rather be a functioning cog in some great machinery, serving something beyond me. But I don't know what that will be. I'll get back to you someday soon. You will see.
While listening to Helplessness Blues, I was trying to figure out which Fleet Foxes album was my favorite. So I listened to their self-titled debut album again. And without a shadow of a doubt, I can say that this is their magnum opus. This is the kind of record that you listen to while driving through a national park or gazing out on a beautiful scenic vista. The album knows what it is setting out to do from the start, and it never deviates. I think the best way to describe it sonically is what a folk Beach Boys album would sound like, which is an incredibly exciting prospect to me. The harmonies are just so luscious that there's a real attention to melody. It's absolutely fantastic. As I mentioned before, the song track is remarkably consistent, featuring songs like White Winter Hymnal, Tiger Mountain Peasant Song, He Doesn't Know Why, and Oliver James. My favorite track would have to be Ragged Wood, though. The guitar line that kicks in halfway just fills me up with this sincere joy that only a really great song can do. What more can I say? This album is just pure magic. It's a masterpiece that you should listen to right now. 5 out of 5. This last month, Neil Young, Joni Mitchell, and other artists left Spotify to protest some things that podcaster Joe Rogan had said about COVID-19. It was kind of a sad moment for me because I'd been with Spotify for several years and I loved the service, but I decided it was time to switch over to Apple Music so I could support and listen to these artists. Because of this, the first album I listened to on Apple Music was Joni Mitchell's second album, Clouds. I've listened to the majority of Mitchell's albums, but I had never had the privilege of listening to this one. Even though it was written when she was only 23, the lyrics seem to come from somebody who is twice her age. They are poetic and thought-provoking, the prime example of this being Both Sides Now, a song that brilliantly goes over the fleeting feeling of mortality. Mitchell's voice is the equivalent of having angels kissing your ears. It's so beautiful and smooth. It's perhaps not my favorite album by Mitchell. It kind of drags off at the end a little, but it is certainly one of her best. I'll give it a 4.5 out of 5.
Rose and flows of angel hair and ice cream castles in the air and feather canyons everywhere. Looked at clouds that were...
Continuing the folk trend, I listened to Illinois by Sufjan Stevens. This was another recommendation from Rate My Music, and being a fan of Sufjan's album Carrie and Lowell, I decided to give it a listen. When it started, I really enjoyed it. The tracks reminded me of the music on Nick Drake's album Brighter Later, with a very dense production featuring a wide variety of instruments like flutes and strings and drums, etc. I was really enjoying it. But as the album progressed, I sort of lost interest in it. The tracks all kind of blended together, making it hard for me to stay engaged. That being said, I did really enjoy it. I had a lot of fun with it. I think my favorite track was Come On Fill the Illinois, Part 1, The World's Columbian Exposition, Part 2, Carl Sandburg Visits Me in a Dream. Oh yeah, all the songs have great names, which is kind of fun. Some of them are very long, like paragraph long names for the songs. Fun album. I'll give it a 3.5 out of 5.
Oh, great intentions. I've got the best of interventions, but when the ads go, I think about it now. In my infliction, entrepreneurial
Switching gears a little, I listened to the Rolling Stones' classic album, Exile on Main Street. This particular record is seen by many to be the last great Stones album, and it was the end of their great run of albums that started with Beggars Banquets. It represents a shift in sound for the band. The album came from Mick Jagger's obsession with country rock, and that inspiration is present on many of the songs here. I think my favorite aspect of the album, and what I enjoyed most when I was listening to it, is just how loose it is. All the instruments pile up on top of each other. There isn't much cohesion in any of the songs. It makes for an exciting listening experience. You never know what the next song will be, so it keeps you on your toes. I'd never listened to it all the way through before, and I'm glad that I have, because it's an absolute blast of a record. It's the kind of album that you listen to on a road trip across the USA and just bop to all the way along. The best track would have to be Tumblin' Die. The background singers add a lot of soul to the track. It's a fantastic song. I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5. Speaking of soul, the next album I listened to was Al Green's Greatest Hits. I've never really listened to much of Al Green, unfortunately, and the only song I really knew by him was Take Me to the River, and that was because of the fantastic Talking Heads cover of the song, so I had to check out his original version. Now, after listening to it, I'm just wondering, where has Al Green been my whole life? His music is such a distinct style that really falls in perfectly with my musical taste. Love and Happiness, Let's Stay Together, and Here I Am, Come and Take Me, all hit the spot for me. I won't rank it since it's a greatest hits record, but I loved it. Definitely check it out.
Love and happiness. Yeah. Something that can make you do wrong, make you do right. Yeah. Love. Love and happiness.
I'd heard a lot about the 2000s indie rock band Animal Collective recently, so I decided to check them out. To start off my journey, my deep dive into their music, I listened to Merryweather Post Pavilion. Of all the albums I listened to this month, this was the one that I listened to the most. I think I listened to it in total about 4 times. And that's saying a lot. That's cool. The re-listenability of an album means a lot to me. So it's an incredibly dense record with so many sounds, harmonies, magical production techniques. Even though it came out in 2009, it has a timeless feel to it. It very well could have come out in the 60s, and honestly, I could have seen it coming out 20 years in the future. It just has a very unique sound, very timeless feel to it. Many of the songs didn't land with me, like the opening track didn't really draw me in as well, and many of the other songs as well. And I think it could have been about 15 minutes shorter. But in all honesty, this is a magical album to listen to on headphones. Listening to it on headphones, it gives you the full 3D panoramic sound system. It's really awesome. My Girls and Brother Sport were my favorite tracks. I'll give this a 3.5 out of 5.
Open up your throat and let the all of that time, all of that time, all of that time go. I know it sucks that daddy's done, but try to think of what you want. You got to open up your throat. Open up your, 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 open up your throat. Open up your throat and let the all of that time, all of that time, all of that time go. I know it sucks that daddy's done.
I don't know entirely why, but Frank Zappa has always kind of been an intimidating artist for me. I've always kind of avoided his work. Maybe it's because I thought his production on Trout Mask Replica, the Captain Beefheart album, was just horrible. Or maybe it's because his album Freak Out is one of the weirdest, strangest albums that has ever graced my ears. But I decided to give his album Hot Rats a go. And first off, right off the bat, what a weird name for an album. And the album cover is even weirder. I don't know if you guys can see it if you're listening on Spotify, but it's him like in a swimming pool, like grasping on the edge, and it's all pink. It's a weird album cover. So it's always been one that I've avoided. A lot of people have told me, hey, you got to listen to Hot Rats. It's incredible. It's incredible. So I gave it a go, and holy cow, I love this album. Love this album. Of all the new albums I listened to this month, this is my favorite. I am blown away by pretty much every aspect of this record. It's the best way I can describe it is a jazz rock album. So the drums, the jazz guitar, everything, it's playing in a rock style, but mixed with jazz elements. So the free roaming aspect of it, the improvisation of it, it's all so very exciting. Frank Zappa's guitar work on here is beautiful. It's incredible. I never realized how incredible of a guitar player Frank Zappa was. He is absolutely phenomenal. There's not a boring second on this album. Every second that I was listening to, I thought there's no way that this could get any better. And the next track got better. Incredible listen. Go check it out. 5 out of 5 easily. I think Peaches in Regalia is my favorite song off of the album. I listened to a lot of new music in 2021, and I fell in love with many artists. It was a great year of musical discovery for me. I fell in love with artists like Talking Heads, The Stone Roses, Los Lobos, and Charles Mingus, all of which gave me albums that are wonderfully re-listenable. But one of the most exciting discoveries for me, though, was The Smiths, and especially their 1986 classic album, The Queen is Dead. It's an album that the more I listen to, the more I am blown away with. It's 36 minutes and 38 seconds long, and not a second, not an instant off of it is wasted. Every song from the title track to Cemetery Gates, from I Know It's Over to The Boy with the Thorn in His Side, are all alt-rock perfection. The lyrics are simultaneously depressing and hilarious, if you can figure that out. It's amazing. The instrumentalism is top-notch, but special shout-out to Andy Rourke, the bassist, who has some of the tastiest bass licks I have ever heard. Morrissey's vocals are also the best they've ever been. Just listen to Big Mouth Strikes Again or Some Girls Are Bigger Than Others. My favorite tracks have to be Big Mouth Strikes Again, like I mentioned before, and There Is a Light That Will Never Go Out. Both would easily place high in my list of favorite songs from the 80s. The Queen is Dead was ranked the greatest album of all time by musical newspaper NME. And it's hard to argue with that. There's a reason why I listened to it again in February. I'll give this album a solid 5 out of 5.
Sweetness, I was only joking when I said I'd like to mash every tooth in your head. Oh, sweetness, sweetness, I was only joking when I said by rights you should be bludgeoned in your bed. And now I know how Joan of Arc felt. Now I know how Joan of Arc felt.
You guys, I love live albums. In some instances, an artist is better able to capture the raw energy and power they're looking for when performing in front of a live audience. Great examples of this include The Who's live at Leeds, Johnny Cash's live at Folsom Prison. I would even add Van Morrison's It's Too Late to Stop Now. And then, of course, the album I listened to this month, which was Peter Frampton Comes Alive by Peter Frampton. Up to this point in his career, Frampton had been a commercial failure. This album quickly became not just his first commercial breakthrough, but also one of the highest selling albums of all time, and I think the third highest selling live album of all time. This was the first time I listened to this bad boy, and I can definitely see why it's so popular. The energy on display here is just contagious and astonishing. I can tell that it had a large influence on rock, as many artists that came afterward try to emulate the power pop sound found on these tracks. My favorite songs are Show Me the Way and Baby I Love Your Way. I think it goes on just a little bit too long, and some of the tracks are not as exciting as others, but it is definitely a very fun record. I'll give it a 4 out of 5.
I wonder how you're feeling. It's ringing in my ears, and no one to relate to.
Speaking of live concerts, I'm going to a John Mayer concert this month, so I thought it'd be a good idea to listen to his most popular and critically acclaimed album, Continuum. I thought it was okay. Not my favorite album of all time, but I definitely loved the singles. I mean, Slow Dancing in a Burning Room, Gravity, the one about the world, what's that song called? Gonna keep on waiting on the world to change. That one, whatever that song's called. I enjoyed it. I thought a lot of the songs were pretty filler. Maybe I just need to listen to it again, but it wasn't really my cup of tea. Pretty good. Great singles. Okay, rest of the songs. I'll give it a 3 out of 5. After Continuum, I listened to Sandista by The Clash. This is a really interesting record. Basically, the story of it is The Clash released their incredible, genre-defying, generation-defying album, London Calling. And they knew it was perfect. They knew it would be impossible to follow it up. So how do you follow up a perfect album? Well, they released Sandista, and it is a 2-hour and 40-minute long triple record, which is just chock full of really fun, really loose, very politically charged songs. It has a lot of really great moments. My favorite song on the album has to be The Magnificent Seven, the opening track, which is just so good. Maybe my favorite Clash song ever. It's obviously not as tight, as cohesive, as epic as London Calling is, but for what it is and where it is in the Clash's career, it's honestly a really great album. Give it a listen if you're a fan of the Clash. Give it a listen if you're interested in some post-punk classics, or if you're interested in kind of a politically charged, angsty record. It's a fun listen. It's got some really funny moments on it. It just shows that the Clash has a great sense of humor. I'll give it a 4 out of 5. After I listened to Sandista, I listened to Freak Out by the Mothers of Invention. And like I mentioned earlier, I was always kind of intimidated by, what's his name, Frank Zappa. Mostly because of this album. I listened to this album when I was in high school, and it really weirded me out. It was probably the weirdest album I'd ever heard up to that point in my life. And you know what? I decided to give it another go because I loved Hot Rat so much. I thought it was so incredible. And after having listened to it, I think I kind of have the same thoughts that I do have before. Basically, the idea was it came out in 1966. It is often cited as one of rock's music's first concept albums. It is a satirical expression of frontman Frank Zappa. It's him making fun of pop culture, basically. And it's super influential. It started the psychedelic kick. It was the first rock and roll double album. It's huge. It shaped all pop music going forward at that point. However, it is very, very, very weird. If you're wondering, like, the side 3 and 4 is just so strange. Help I'm a Rock is one of the weirdest songs I've ever heard in my life. The Return of the Son of Monster Magnet, and Ritual Dance of the Child Killer, and Trouble Every Day. Just so weird. Such weird names, such weird tracks. And I guess that's kind of the charm of it, is while I was listening to it, I was laughing my head off because of just how bizarre it is. Do I like this album? I'm not really sure. Did I have a fun time listening to it? Yeah. So for that reason, I'm going to give it a out of 5.
Susie?
Yes.
Susie Cream Cheese?
Yes.
This is the voice of your conscience, baby. I just want to check one thing out with you. You don't mind, do you?
What?
Susie Cream Cheese, honey, what's got into you?
It just makes me laugh listening to it, honestly. It's so weird. Anyways, after I listened to the strange Freak Out by Mothers of Inventions, I listened to Ascension by John Coltrane, which is equally odd and equally firmly planted in the avant-garde. And now, for those of you who know me, you know that I love jazz music, and my favorite jazz musician by far is John Coltrane. I think he just has such a magnetic personality. Each of his albums is so artistically brilliant, and I think Ascension is one of his greatest I've ever heard. I am so glad I finally went around to listening to it. Basically what it is John Coltrane trying to copy the sound of Ornette Coleman's free jazz album, and doing that while bringing his own spiritual awakening sense that he had in albums like A Love Supreme, which is a fantastic album. The result is something so transcendent, so spiritual, so beautiful. I love this album. It's about 30 minutes long. It is crazy. It's so layered. It's definitely not for just the average jazz fan. You have to be kind of deeply rooted in jazz to really appreciate it. But for those of you who have listened to it and do enjoy it, hats off to you. I think this album is incredible. Definitely John Coltrane stepping into the avant-garde, not even stepping into, full on diving into the avant-garde, and I think that is really honorable. I'll give this album a 4.5 out of 5. As I mentioned before, I'm currently running my own radio show up on campus, up at USU, called Dave's Faves. And if you haven't listened to it, you definitely should listen to it. Anyways, a couple weeks ago, I played a Mexican show where I just played some of my favorite songs with Mexican music. And in inspiration of that, I decided to re-listen to one of my favorite albums ever, which is Un Canto por México, Volumen 1, by Natalia Lafourcade. And one thing that I just so much appreciate about this album and about Natalia Lafourcade's music in general is just how much fun it is from the get-go, with the band coming in and introducing Natalia Lafourcade, and then Natalia swoops in with her beautiful angelic voice and just proclaims, just sings her heart out. It's just so much fun. Most of the album is covers from previous albums like Hasta la Raíz, Nunca Suficiente, Para Que Sufrir, etc. But she does have a few original songs, like Mi Religión, which is one of my favorites by her. And while on those other albums, it's kind of acoustic folk sounding, very stripped down folk sound, this album is with lush instrumentals, great production, made to sound like something that a mariachi band would play. And for that reason, it just holds a special place in my heart. There isn't a dull song on this album. It is pure bangers from start to finish. If you're into Mexican music at all, or if you're wanting to get into it, this would definitely be the album that I would recommend that you check out. Un Canto por México, Volumen 1, easily gets a 5 out of 5. And my favorite songs would have to be Mi Religión and Mi Tierra Veracruzana.
Desde que vi tus ojos me enamoré, me enamoré, me enamoré. Desde que oí tu canto sabía que no había manera de abandonarte, mi amor, porque toda la luz y colores de un cielo azul haces brillar, eres tú, mi religión.
Going back to Animal Collective, I decided to listen to the album that they released right before Merriweather Post Pavilion, which was Strawberry Jam. I really liked Merriweather Post Pavilion, as I mentioned earlier, and I was pretty disappointed with Strawberry Jam. It's a lot more harsh. It's a lot uglier or something. Like, the production sounds a lot more intense, grimy, a lot less appealing than Merriweather Post Pavilion, which was very much inspired by sunshine pop and bright harmonies and everything. So really not my cup of tea. If you enjoy this album, good for you, but I did not enjoy listening to it very much. I'll give Strawberry Jam a 2 out of 5. And to finish off the month, I listened to Apostrophe by Frank Zappa. Like I said, Hot Rats was just so good that it inspired me it got me on a kick of listening to more Frank Zappa albums. And what can I say? This album is a lot of fun. The best way I can describe it is it's a rock opera featuring the zany weirdness of Frank Zappa while also being completely listenable. It's very fun. It has some crazy track names like Don't Eat the Yellow Snow and some Stinkfoot and just so many other really weird names. It's a lot of fun. If you're into kind of zany weirdness like I am, you'll definitely get a kick out of it. I don't think I like it as much as Hot Rats. It's not as beautiful or as epic or as innovative as that album was, but I definitely liked it, and it was a great way to finish off the month. So yeah, there you go. That's what I listened to this month, or last month in February. I listened to some fantastic albums that I have wondered, where was this artist my entire life? So it was a very successful month. I am excited. I've already listened to some great albums this month as well. I hope you guys take the inspiration to maybe listen to a couple of these albums, or maybe comment which albums you listened to this month, or if there's any music that you're getting into right now. I would love to hear it. I would love to listen. So send me your recommendations. I love you guys. Thanks you so much for listening today, and I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I will see you next week. Bye.
In the dark, where all the fevers grow, under the water, where the shark bubbles blow, in the morning, by your radio, do the walls close in to suffocate ya? You ain't got no friends, and all the others they hate ya. Does the life you've been leading gotta go?